Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. This episode is sponsored by my 3D printing website. Check out dangly3d.com, where for the next little while, you can get 25% off your complete order by using code NEWYEAR2025 at checkout. That's NEWYEAR2025 at checkout for 25% off your entire order. Check it out at dangly3d.com. Alright, on to today's Malicious Compliance stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Condiments for You and is titled Condiments the Great. Hi all, Happy New Year's. In reviewing some of my best memories of the last few years, I remembered an incident of malicious compliance that I found overwhelmingly satisfying and thought it'd be worth sharing. While not as outrageous as some of the stories here, it left me feeling like I stuck it to our corporate overlords a bit. To set the stage, I moved back to the US to take a job at a pretty big firm where I was also tasked with executive assistant responsibilities. My boss would regularly send me downstairs to our local bank to pick up and deposit cash. Having newly moved back to the US, I needed to set up a bank account for direct deposits and figured the one downstairs makes sense. Also, it made depositing paychecks quicker and easier. On the day I went to open the account, the manager of the branch sat me down to go through all the paperwork. She was nice enough at first, and I got through everything quite quickly. That said, when it came to the Signuate portion, I thought I'd have a bit of fun with it and create a silly signature. Having just watched a Roman documentary the night before, I made my signature Condiments the Great. Obviously, I used my first name in place of Condiments. The manager did not bat an eye, assuming she didn't read it, and said she'd process everything and give me a call when my card is ready to collect. Cut to a little later, I receive a call from the manager saying there's something wrong with the paperwork and I needed to come down to correct it. When I asked what the problem was, she says I'm not allowed to have a signature like that and I need to redo it using my actual name. I say okay and that I'll be right down. This kind of pissed me off though, because I've seen wild signatures that hardly resemble letters, yet they were still accepted. I did some quick research and found that legally, a signature can be any mark that I plan on using consistently. It didn't have to be a name, or even resemble letters. Being bored that day, I decided to press it and print out the laws regarding signatures and bring them with me to the bank. When I met the manager, I told her that I'd actually like to keep the signature as is, and provided her with the documents I printed outlining the laws. She did not seem enthused at all and said she'd need a moment to discuss with her superiors. A few minutes later, she comes back and says, while I'm correct about the law, they require the signature to match the one on my driver's license, since that's the one currently associated with me. I pushed back and mentioned that I wanted to have a new signature, but she was firm on it matching my ID or they wouldn't open my account. Cue Malicious Compliance. I realized then that since the state I moved to was different from the one I lived in before, I had to legally update my license. So I told the manager I'd think it over and get back to her soon. I hurried upstairs and made a DMV appointment for later that week to get a new license. The day of the DMV appointment, I brought everything I needed to ensure I walked out with a new license. When it was time for me to provide a signature for the license, I again wrote Condiments the Great and was again met with pushback. The teller literally said, "Sir, this is the DMV and we don't play games like that." Well, I whipped out the law to show them that I am actually allowed to use this as my signature, and the teller's ego deflated real fast. Long story short, I walked out that day with a shiny new license and my new signature. I drove directly from the DMV back to the bank and met with the teller. I told her that I will agree to sign the documents using the same signature on my license. I don't think she could have looked any more smug. She took me back to the office and sat me down to re-sign the documents. And I did so as Condiments the Great. When she saw this, she practically started shouting about how I'm wasting their time and either need to get serious or they'll have me escorted out. This is when I slowly removed my brand new ID and slid it across the desk. Her face went blank, and I honestly couldn't tell what she was thinking. She asked me to leave the office for a moment so she could make a call. 10 minutes later, she comes out and says, while my signature does match the one on my license, they are just refusing to do business with me and asked me to leave. Not knowing the legality of that, I said okay and accepted defeat. I walked back up to my office and told my boss that they're not allowing me to open an account. I told him the full story, and he actually found it hilarious. He then said that he'd handle it. Later that day, I received a call from the bank saying that they'd changed their mind and that they've opened the checking and savings account I requested. I went to speak with my boss after, who said that he had a productive chat with the manager. Knowing how much business he provides the bank, he was happy enough to bluff on my behalf. He essentially told the manager that not allowing me to open an account was directly affecting his business, and that if they don't oblige, he'd close his accounts and take his business elsewhere. Apparently that threat hit hard, and the manager quickly backtracked, saying that they never refused my business, just had to get approval from upper management. At the end of the day, I was victorious, and I still use this signature on all official documents. It's a bit silly, but it's my trophy and a good conversation starter. Oh, OP, it sounds like they were really banking on you being just another average customer, but you weren't about to give up. You deposited a little extra effort to stand out. Clearly, they couldn't account for your level of persistence, and it's a good thing you didn't let them withdraw their patience so quickly. The whole saga is a telltale sign of what happens when someone underestimates you. Your boss stepping in to help balance the scales definitely deserves some credit. In the end, it looks like the bank finally showed some interest in your unique style, even though they tried to cash out early on. Moral of the story, never loan your time to people who don't appreciate your greatness. This story comes to us from John Galt 314, my new favorite customer. I own and run a residential light commercial HVAC contracting company. We have a customer, we'll call him Tom, that contacted us for a residential breakdown. Tom told us that he had a home warranty, and we informed him that their repayment policy is often different than our billing rates, and that regardless of their payment, he would be individually responsible for the full amount of the bill. The repair was a smallish fix for just $228. Bear in mind that home warranty companies are notoriously stingy with payments, if they pay at all. We won't work directly with them for this reason. Sure enough, the home warranty company paid only $153 of the invoice, leaving a balance due of $75. Tom wasn't happy about having to pay this bill, so he began paying us $1 per week automatically by check through his online banking platform. Neither I nor my bookkeeper were exactly excited by this because it takes the same amount of her time to process a $1 check as it does a $1,000 check, but we decided to take our lumps. Here we are, now exactly 76 weeks later, and Mr. Tom has accidentally paid us $1 too much, so he put a stop payment on the final $1 check. I actually made it a point to look up the stop check payment policy from his bank and saw that he would have to pay $35 to do this. I honestly have nothing but respect for this amount of spite. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Von Blankenstein. It says, "It's just odd that he decides you are the bad guy instead of the home warranty company." Yeah, I'm not sure about that one because the home warranty company did tell him that they pay a standard rate, so the customer probably feels like he's being overcharged by OP's company because OP's company isn't charging the quote-unquote standard rate. You really do have to admire the persistence of this customer, but you also have to admire OP and the fact that they didn't start tacking on interest once this had gone over 30 days. This story comes to us from True Half Crack. Won't release my car? Great idea. I'll call the cops. This is a few years back, though I am still driving my 2005 Santa Fe that's involved with this little dust-up. I had just gotten a new job in a different state, and because it was somewhat of a promotion, the company paid entirely for the move. After seeing all of my stuff packed away safely, the movers started heading to the new state. But as they were driving a different route to avoid icy roads through the Rockies, they were going to take a little longer. So we drove through the night and ended up staying at a hotel. On the way over, I noticed my brakes starting to vibrate just a bit on the descent into the new state, and they were squeaking a tad. New brake pads, maybe new rotors if they can't be machined, no big deal, right? So after we got our stuff unloaded and into the new place, I take the car to a mechanic shop that had good ratings and was even recommended to me by a coworker. But I swear they took a look at my out-of-state license plate and saw dollar signs. When I dropped off the car, I signed the work order for a tire rotation, I know, I'm lazy, and a free inspection, just wanting them to confirm my suspicion on the brakes. I specifically told them to not do any work unless I specifically authorized them over the phone and in writing. You can probably guess what happened next. I called after about an hour to see what they'd found, and sure enough, the boss of that shop said that, unfortunately, I not only needed new pads and rotors, but new calipers as well, totaling $1,200. But not to worry, as they'd already started working on it and would have it done in just under a couple hours. Needless to say, I was pissed as hell, and told him that I had not authorized that, nor did I agree that those repairs were likely necessary. I told him I would be over in a minute to cease all work on the car, and that I would talk to him in person. On the way over, I called a different shop, one that had better ratings, and the one I eventually used for every car-related need after this for the rest of the time I lived in that state, and explained the situation. She said that it was highly suspect that they wanted to replace the calipers, but that they'd be happy to give me a second opinion, of course, and that they usually ran around $300 for new pads and rotors. I always get a second and sometimes third opinion on non-emergency repairs like this, just because of the skewed incentives on the dodgy repair places to trump up what's needed, like the original place was doing. Anyway, I get to the repair shop and proceed to tell the manager that I was taking my car elsewhere for a second opinion, and that if he was right and the calipers needed to be replaced, along with the rest of the brake assembly, I would be happy to have him bid on the work. He responded that he'd be happy to have my car towed to a different shop for $150, but that he was legally obligated to hold my car as it was an unsafe vehicle, and he would be liable for any damages that ensued if my brakes were to fail should I leave. I knew this was BS. We yelled about it for 10 minutes, with him every time refusing to budge, saying that he'd have it towed for $150 or do the repairs, nothing else. I told him he was committing grand theft auto, and that I would call the cops if he didn't put my car back together and let me drive away. He told me to do it, that they would back him 100%, and they might fine me for driving with completely destroyed brakes. So I did. I called the non-emergency police line and was eventually transferred to a very nice female police officer, and I calmly explained to her my situation. She was super helpful and confirmed, of course, that the mechanic had no legal basis to hold my car against my will. And although she did warn me that I was, of course, liable for any and all problems that might arise if I was indeed driving with bad brakes, it wasn't his problem. She actually laughed at him, saying he was liable if I got into a wreck after I left, and that he was in violation of the law. So I took my cell phone in and had him talk to her, and he proceeded to be a massive butthole to her on the phone. At first, not believing that she was, in fact, a real police officer, and then insisting that she didn't know what she was talking about. He'd done this before, and he knew the law. He still didn't believe she was a real, actual police officer, so she promised that he'd find out soon enough. She told me she said that after he handed the phone back to me. 15 minutes later, after I waited outside, because I was really close to just losing it talking to this effing butthole, a squad car rolls up and asks me where the manager is. They were informed already of the situation, walked up to the guy, and handed him something I assume was either a ticket or a summons or something. They wouldn't tell me what afterward, but they did look satisfied as all hell and were super nice to me, and told him to put my car back together immediately and let me go. This had all been over 4 hours from the time I dropped my car off to the time they drove it out of the bay ready for me to drive away. And after all that, he hands me the bill, $50 for a tire rotation and $100 for the inspection. I had a copy of the original, of course, and told him to go F himself on the inspection fee. And looking at my car outside, I told him to see for himself that the tires weren't actually rotated. The cops were still there too. So there wasn't much he could do but let me sign a $0 work order for nothing and walk away. It was glorious. And of course, the other repair shop said it was just the pads that needed to be replaced, and they were able to machine the rotors so that there wasn't a hint of vibration. All told, $200, and a great new mechanic I could trust in a new area to boot. Seriously, when I find a mechanic or a dentist that I know is honest, I will remain loyal to them until I die or move more than 4 hours away. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Yum Iced Coffee. It says, okay, dumb question. How can you tell when the tires haven't been rotated? I mean, they all look the same, right? OP responded to this one and said, the two on the front were quite a bit more worn down than the ones on the back, enough to where you could see the difference even from a bit of distance, hence why I wanted to rotate them. And that's not a dumb question at all. Hey OP, I have a question. Were you really tired of dealing with that butthole? Oh, I'm gonna get murdered in the comments. Hey, speaking of getting murdered, have you guys checked out my new podcast yet called Karma Crime? It is available on all major podcasting platforms. We've released 3 episodes already, and I would love for you to have a listen and give us a 5-star rating on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. This story comes to us from CompFreak530. Sometimes the mechanic is right. I think this fits here. Not much of a writer, so forgive me for grammatical errors. Little backstory here, I am a professional mechanic and have been for a little over 10 years. I specialize in diagnostics and heavy repair at a do-all shop. Basically, we work on all makes and models. Now, being a mechanic, we have seen the spectrum of customers who get mad over something they did. Bad parts and whatnot, but this story, even after 5 years, still makes me chuckle. It was a normal day when this lady drove her Hyundai van in for a diagnosis. Think an older looking Karen. Nothing unusual about her at first. She comes up and says her check engine light came on and the car just does not want to move like it used to. No problem, I tell her. As we write up the work order and everything, I get to work while she waits. Upon pulling the van in, I notice it's making a noise. So I shut it down and immediately plugged in my scanner to read the computers in the car for errors. A bunch of error codes pop up. After looking over them, I see they all lead in the direction of timing issues. My thought is, oh, the timing belt jumped. Easy. Timing belt is a very critical part of some engines. It keeps the crankshaft and camshafts in perfect alignment. So I open the hood and go to pull the covers to expose the belt and check the condition. I had to take a few steps and let out a very audible, holy crap, with part of the cover off. I found half the belt missing. Most likely disintegrated from age, and the other is literally about to break completely. I see a few strands left holding this belt together. It's a miracle it ran even to get into my bay. Just an FYI, this particular engine is designed with tight tolerances, such as if the timing is too far off, basically it destroys the engine. The valves slam into the pistons, broken metal, banging, bad things that cost a lot of money. We look it over and see the vehicle is $30,000 past the recommended change for a timing belt. It's amazing this thing runs. We inform the customer and bring her out to the shop and show her what we found. We try to explain it in as layman terms as possible while still respecting her. Some old ladies know their crap on cars, it's crazy. She sees it and from my story appears to understand completely. I inform her it's a miracle it even drove in. I highly recommend she not drive it or even start the engine until after the belt has been replaced. We go up front and go over timing belt replacement package with her and cost of labor and parts. She flat out goes, "No, I don't trust you people." We get that a lot. I try to answer any questions she might have, but no, she's not having any of it. I let her know we will price match anyone in town and that I have already marked it down way below normal price to try and help her out. But again, no, she wants her car back. I suggest she tow it to where she wants, and she flips on me. "I drove my car in, I'm going to drive it out." Okay. I immediately have her sign a waiver that she understands what can happen and we are not liable. By this point, we have reassembled the covers and pushed the van out to the parking lot. I again try to reason with her that it's a bad idea to run this engine. The belt replacement is only a few $100s versus $5,000 for a replacement engine. "No, I'm driving it." She almost refused to pay our diagnostic fee until I told her I can hold the car indefinitely without payment. This whole time I'm trying to be nice, but by now she's been screaming at me and my coworkers for 30 minutes saying I'm holding her vehicle hostage and that I'm trying to sell her repairs she knows she does not need. And as for the malicious compliance, I handed her the keys, which she basically ripped from my hands and stormed out. We all kind of gathered to see if it would even start. We heard the engine crank, fire up, then bam, followed by stall. We couldn't believe it. She attempted to start it again, this time the engine just free spinning with no compression. The belt broke and the engine had been damaged. Oh great, here goes the next hour of my life, though I'm trying hard not to laugh. She opened her door with enough force that I'm surprised it did not break. She starts screaming at me, telling me I sabotaged her and I have to fix it. We informed her of her choices, and that only made her turn a shade of red I did not think was possible. She kind of went into a scream, squeal, yell thing that I can't explain. I only made a few words like lawyer, sue, cops, as well as every expletive in the book. She told me if we did not fix it, she would call the police, corporate, managers, Yelp, the whole thing. We just said we warned her beforehand, but she did not listen. The fault was hers and hers only. She starts screaming in the parking lot, and we just went back inside, laughing with a few of our other customers who were waiting. They heard it all. About 10 minutes later, our local police shows up, demanding to know what happened and how we destroyed her car. I go over it with them away from her. We show them our photo evidence attached to the work order and the written release of liability she signed. They agreed with us. Watching them walk back to her and seeing the grin slowly turn into disbelief was priceless. The van sat in our lot for almost a month while she tried to get our management and corp to pay for it. They all denied it. We got a few calls from lawyers who we presented our evidence to, who also said she had nothing. I think the best part of this entire ordeal is when she finally came to have it towed. We informed her she owed us a lot storage fee, at $15 a day after the 7th day of work completed. The diagnostic she paid was the completed work. Cue Velociraptor screeches. Now, I want to make a point, mechanics get a bad name. 1 out of every 100 shops might screw people over. It's true. I try my darndest to prevent that, even giving work away if the situation calls for it. But there was no helping this person. Heck, had she been nice and informed me of money issues or something, I probably would have done the job for darn near nothing to help out. A lot of mechanics don't want to screw you out of money. They just want to make sure your huge investment stays in good shape. OP, this story really timed itself perfectly for some laughs. You tried to belt out a warning, but she clearly couldn't crank out a rational thought. Her ignition of rage must have been something to see. Good thing you were geared up with all the right paperwork to keep her from stalling your day. Alright everybody, I'm gonna be disappointed if you don't let me have it in the comments for all these puns. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.